Hi, Elaine. For the final week of the term, I wanted to go through some of the things that we've been learning over the past few weeks during shutdown. Our focus, as you know, has been the rise of Hitler and the causes of the Second World War. Here's a Hitler on both the slides. On the right-hand side, with his resplendent moustache there. What makes Hitler's rise even more remarkable is his origins. Remember that before the outbreak of the First World War, he was a down and out. He was living on the streets. And after being rejected by the army in his native Austria. However, the outbreak of war meant that Germany were just desperate for soldiers. The more they could get, the better. And this gave Hitler a purpose in life. By the end of the war, Hitler again had no purpose until he joined the National Socialist Party, better known as the Nazis. At this time, after the war in 1918, they were just another extremist party based in Munich, in the Bavarian region of southern Germany. This is his membership card, and as you can see there, his membership number was 555. However, he was actually only member number 55. They put the first five in front to boast that they were bigger than they actually were. But at this time, the Nazis were just similar to lots of other different parties who were angry with the way Germany had ended the war and sought revenge. So the Nazis had common ground with other extremist parties, all very angry, all wanting to overthrow the government. At this point, Hitler wasn't even the leader. But his speaking skills brought him to close attention. He was a fantastic speaker. His speeches often started off very quiet, so people craned their necks to listen. But by the end of it, he was built up into a crescendo and lots of passion. And he got very well known. He kept repeating the same mantras that Germany had been treated badly by the end of signing the armistice at the end of the First World War. They were treated badly through the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. They lost land. They weren't allowed to build up their ammunition. They lost aeroplanes, submarines, their air force. They had their army reduced to 100,000 men. They were forced to pay reparations. And this focus on the terms of the Treaty of Versailles and how unjust it was. Germany had to take the blame for starting the war. Hitler kept going through this mantra all the time because he knew that eventually it would work in his favour and it could get him some votes. So, 1923, just before to 1923, again, Nazis are a very small extremist party. There had been a couple of attempts to overthrow the government at this time. The communist Spartacists tried to overthrow the government in 1920 and that failed. The right-wing Kat Putsch in 1920 failed. But in 1923, Germany had a year of crisis. We had French soldiers invading the German region of the Ruhr and effectively making Germany feel like they were outsiders in their own country. And then we had the problem of hyperinflation where the cost of everything went absolutely sky high. People lost their savings and people were very, very angry right across Germany. And Hitler thought, this is our time, it's our moment. Listening to the mood of the people, this is our opportunity to take control and try and overthrow the government. The the hyperinflation was so bad that money was worthless. People lost all their savings. People paid with it, or people used it to burn to keep their homes and their families warm. Okay. So Hitler decided to have this uprising. It was called the Munich Putsch. It's in November 1920. However, it failed. Hitler was arrested, put on trial, and jailed. And he was jailed for a relatively short time. He used his time in jail to good purpose and good use. He reorganised the Nazi Party. He also wrote his book Mein Kampf, which translates as My Struggle. And in this, he talks about things that he loves, primarily Germany, and things he hates, Jews, for example. And we get this first opportunity of him being very, very clear that he hates the Jews and the communists. Throughout the 1920s, after Hitler's release, the Nazis were a very minor party. They couldn't get any votes at all. And the reason for this is because Germany was actually doing very well economically. People had jobs, people had money in their pockets, things were going really well. Why change it? If it's not broken, why change it? And there was also a vibrant cabaret arts music scene going on as well. This was totally against the Nazis and their belief about tradition of German culture. However, the partying came to an end because in 1929 in America, the Wall Street crash took place. This is where lots of businesses suffered, collapsed, widespread unemployment. And this led to the Great Depression, which resulted in every country in the world being affected, but Germany was affected more than most simply because it had borrowed so much money from America in the past. So Germany was struggling at this point. People were angry and they wanted change. They blamed the government at this time. Unemployment in Germany rose to 6 million people. Now, that's 6 million registered people. I actually believe that 30 million people were affected in Germany at this time because of the Great Depression. And people wanted a change. People wanted to blame someone. They blamed the government. They wanted change. The change that they wanted was someone who would take control again, just like the Kaiser had done all those years ago before the First World War. And who came out with the same message, simple message all the time, was Hitler and the Nazis. And in 1933, January 1933, Hitler was named Chancellor, similar to our Prime Minister of Germany. However, his position was not always secure, and a series of events helped him to change this. So, for example, in the image you can see there, in February 1933, just 1 month after being named as Chancellor, the Reichstag building, the government building in Berlin, was burnt to the ground. There's still lots and lots of conjecture and suspicions about who was actually involved and who did it. But a Dutch communist was blamed for it, was arrested, put on trial, and executed. In fact, he was Dutch, he was an outsider. In fact, he was a communist. Gave the Nazis a great opportunity to blame the communists, get them banned, and eliminate a threat of them trying to take over. And people were quite happy for the Nazis to do this, to try and rebuild the greatness of Germany, the confidence. And remember what Germany was like before the First World War. Hitler also faced threats from within the party. And in June 1934, the Night of the Long Knives took place. It was when Hitler murdered many of his own Nazi party members. In this image here, we've got Ernst Röhm, who was the head of the SA, the Brown Shirts, Hitler's own private army at one point. And he was murdered because of rumours that he was trying to take over. Whether this is true or not, we don't know. But Hitler did this, and he went on radio later that evening to actually tell people why he did it as well, because he was saying that these people who were plotting against him was an act of treason. They were traitors. And behind Ernst Röhm here, we've got Himmler. Himmler, who helped Hitler to plan this daring assassination, murder of some key members of the Nazi Party. So by August 1934, with the death of Hindenburg, Germany was the dictatorship. And he began to have an impact on life in Germany. He also began to overturn the terms of the Treaty of Versailles, which he promised to do all the time. And the first thing he did was he remilitarized the Rhineland region of Germany, which had been forbidden in the Treaty of Versailles. The Rhineland was always part of Germany. It was never taken off them. They were forbidden to put any military in there. Now, if you look at where the Rhineland is positioned, it is on the border of France. Now, France were very nervous about any German aggression, and that is the reason why they had that put into the terms of the treaty, to keep Germany away from the border. However, Germany marched into the Rhineland. You can see in that image there, there's lots of Nazi salutes to welcome them into that area. Britain and France did nothing at this time to stop them, even though Germany was breaking the rules of the treaty. They were too busy dealing with their own problems because of the fallout of the Great Depression. And many people actually said, well, it's Germany's land anyway. Why shouldn't they be in Rhineland? Let them put troops in there. The treaty was harsh. Let them do as they wish. Maybe this was an error on their part. It was a gamble that paid off for Hitler. That's for certain. But it also gave him confidence for the next move in 1938. Again, break the terms of the Treaty of Versailles by uniting with Austria. And after a highly manipulated election, the two countries were united, and the arrival of the Nazis was greeted with joy from the majority of Austrians, as you can see on the streets there. This cartoon here is very good because actually at the end of the row of people, he says boss of the universe, and there's Hitler walking over the spineless leaders of democracy on his way to become boss of the universe. And nobody stood up to Hitler, and that's what the message of this cartoon is all about. Nobody stood up to him. Nobody did anything to try and stop him. He's seeing what was he going to do next. And on some of the backs here, we have question marks, and that simply means what's he going to do next? What is the next step he's going to take to get him to be boss of the universe? So there's growing pressures from others to get involved. Other countries had their own problems after the Wall Street crash. Many people believe that Britain and France, by not taking any action, were encouraging Hitler. However, the British leader, Neville Chamberlain, wanted to avoid war at all costs. He adopted a policy called appeasement, where he allowed Germany certain demands in different areas in order to avoid conflict. He remembered how deadly the First World War was, and he wanted to avoid it. So and he was seen as a bit of a hero back in England because he wanted to avoid war and conflict. At the Munich Conference of 1938, it was agreed that Germany could have the Sudetenland. The Sudetenland here is the area covered in the brown area around Czechoslovakia. It had been part of Germany before the First World War. It was taken off them because of the Treaty of Versailles. It was handed over to Germany without a fight, and then once he had that, effectively Czechoslovakia is surrounded. Hitler then invaded the rest of Czechoslovakia, and he did it easily. There was no fight against him. After this, he stated that Hitler had no other plans or desire to invade any further other European country. But however, he went against his word. In this image here, you can see that Chamberlain had just returned from meeting Hitler, and he did a famous speech where he declared that he had secured peace in our time. He showed the letter which had Hitler's signature on it, and he was convinced that Hitler was a man of his word, and that meant that no future war, or no future other invasions were going to take place. However, the unthinkable happened, and the Nazis joined with the Soviets under Stalin to join in the Nazi-Soviet pact, whereby they agreed not to fight each other. Now, this is a crucial point in history because it meant that Hitler was making a pact with communists who he'd always said he hated. However, he was doing it for his own purpose. And it meant that he wouldn't have to fight the Russians on one front and the French and the British on the front if it came to war, which he was thinking it would be happening. But remember, at this time as well,
rearmament was taking place. He was preparing for war, although many people often argue whether that was the case or not. And this famous cartoon here has Hitler on the left and Stalin on the right, calling each other names under their breath, actually trying to look as if they're being friendly, but they're not. And the dead body in between them represents Poland because they both invaded Poland from the east and the west. The invasion of Poland was the final straw, and Britain had to abandon its policy of appeasement at this time, and they declared war against Germany on the 3rd of September 1939. Chamberlain was replaced by Churchill, and one of the most important events in world history began. It's a famous cartoon in front of you there. It's Churchill on the left-hand side, rolling his sleeves up, and the title of this cartoon was "We're Right Behind You, Winston." In other words, roll your sleeves up, get ready for the fight. 6 years later, under the leadership of Churchill, and Churchill always opposed appeasement, Hitler and the Nazis were defeated. And it's always interesting if you've seen the film. If you've seen the film about Churchill, which talks about how he was so much against it, but actually he was a lone voice in the government, and at this point, Churchill was the only one who was against it. Okay. So, what I want you to do, one final task to end this year, is I want you to watch part 1 of the Rise of Hitler: The Rise of Evil. There's a link on this image, and also I'll put a link on Show My Homework. If you're doing GCSE with me next year, or with history, I should say, I look forward to seeing you in September. Okay. A lot of this work we will be going over again, but in more depth. We will be doing practice exam questions as well. Okay. Just leaves me to say, have a great summer. I hope the weather picks up a little bit. It's been a strange old year, hasn't it? But have a great summer. I look forward to seeing you all in September. Take care. All the best. Have fun.